Hey there, this is David Davis, just popping in real quick. We had recorded the episode already, but I wanted to drop a shout out to the Chucky Vision podcast. You can find it on Spotify. It's part of the We Made This podcast network, hosted by Mark Adams and Dave Elson. It, too, explores the Chucky franchise, including the TV show. I've already started talking with them, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to work together on something. But in the meantime, after you're done listening to Kids' Stuff, a Chucky podcast, please check out Chucky Vision, a Chucky podcast. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive into the episode, so enjoy. Hello, and welcome to Kids' Stuff, a Chucky podcast, a HauntedMTL original podcast. I am your host, David Davis, and I have a special guest this week. It is my wife, Holly Hann. So hello, Holly.
Hello, Holly.
Yeah. So, it's kind of a special little Halloween episode. I've wanted to do an episode with my wife. My wife. So it's going to be kind of interesting because we're going to be talking about the third episode of the Chucky series, but we are also going to be discussing just Chucky in general because I have become hyperfixated.
Yeah, he has.
So, go ahead and introduce yourself, Holly. What should we know about you?
I'm your wife. We've been together for 8 years. We met in a graveyard, of all things. So, we both have, a good horror background, I think, when it comes to being a fan or just enjoying, what the franchises have to offer.
We're both creeps.
Yeah, we are.
So, I guess I wanna posit this question to you. What is your experience with horror, prior to meeting me? Because, I definitely probably had a bit of an influence on you, but, yeah.
A bit. So I actually grew up Mormon, and I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of stuff. My parents kept it from me, so it was a lot of discovering after I was 16 and broke away from the church. So a lot of it's within the past 15, 16 years of discovering a lot of things that people have already loved.
So prior to 16, there was, nothing then?
Some things. It's all very... How would I say this? It all has to be very wholesome.
So, the Universal Studios monster movies?
Yeah, Hocus Pocus.
Okay, yeah. So, Halloween for Disney kids.
Pretty much.
Okay. And then around 16, things kind of started changing a bit. What was the first, real, scary horror thing that you recall watching or playing or reading?
Actually, the Rocky Horror Picture Show was a huge influence on me.
Okay.
I know that doesn't necessarily qualify as horror, but it was my bridging point.
Okay, yeah, I mean that's perfectly fair too. That's definitely going to have an impact on you, and I see how it kind of did. What was your experience with Chucky prior to meeting me?
I'd seen Child's Play. I was aware of Tiffany and Chucky, mainly through pop culture, going to Spencer's and seeing them and whatnot. Chucky creeped me out because, it just his actions and movements in general, just the physiological aspect of Chucky really creeped me out. So it was something I kind of avoided, actually. Mm-hmm. But when I was younger, I wanted a hearse as my first car. And my security system idea was to put Chucky and Tiffany in the seats so nobody would mess with the car.
And, that's fantastic. I love that. So, I think we can probably talk a little bit about the episode in a minute. So obviously I've been talking about Chucky a lot in our apartment.
Yes.
How has that been?
It's been interesting, but also with the new series, it's been fun because we've rewatched the movies. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, there's just so much to unpack, I think, with the series, and as it unfolds in regard to other horror series, I think it's very progressive. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is kind of weirdly progressive in a lot of ways, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward, because we get some of that in this episode. But Chucky has always been a thing that's been in my life You've heard the story about the My Buddy doll and everything like that.
Oh yeah, how you had to soul transfer yourself into your little doll when you were a kid?
Yeah, there was an attempt. I'll just say that.
There was an attempt. I'm really glad that didn't happen though, because I'm not gonna make love to a little doll.
Okay, there we go. So, yeah, but like, you know, because I was planning on doing the podcast, so I had to kind of watch the movies all over again. Like Child's Play, the original, is one of those that I can watch over and over and over. But
it's the mom from Seventh Heaven.
Exactly.
That's how I knew her.
And so, you know, I'm basically marathoning these. I think I did like 2 of them a day.
Yeah, that was
for a while.
That was an interesting week.
And you weren't super interested in sitting down and watching them at first.
No, I think because it's a slower pace, and that it didn't spark my interest. Not to say it's not bad, it's just I have ADHD, so...
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. So what was it that, like, got you to, like, sit down and kind of follow through them?
I think when I noticed little things that the adults were doing wrong, I was like, what are they doing? What? Especially in regards to little Andy, just how he was mistreated as a child, and he didn't receive any like psychological care that was meaningful. They locked him in a room. They sent him to boot camp. Like, what?
Well, and that's the fun part about watching these with you is your outrage, your sheer just outrage at what is going on in any given movie or what's happening in the TV show. Like, you get very mad.
I do. If I see an injustice, I'm very much about calling it out, and I get upset about it. In fact, I do have a bit on that later when we discuss the episode.
Yeah, particularly revolving around the character of Lexi.
Oh, Lexi.
So, all right, well, thank you, Holly. I think we can kind of dive into the episode. So what I'm going to do here is going to give us a little bit of background about, like, who was the production staff on the episode, who directed it, give us, like, a brief synopsis of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then for those of you who are listening to the podcast, remember that you can always check out the reviews on HauntedMTL.com. So this episode, Chucky Season 1, Episode 3, is I Like to Be Hugged, which is one of those iconic kind of Chucky lines when he's the My Buddy doll. And the episode's dealing with the fallout of Lexi's vicious Halloween prank in the second episode. So this is a spoiler-centric podcast, so she ends up doing a Halloween costume that is Jake's father, basically electrocuting himself. And it kind of pushes Jake to the edge, so the episode opens up with Chucky kind of giving Jake an education on what it takes to be a killer, based on his own experiences. It also kind of gives us the deepest dive into the childhood of Charles Lee Ray yet, and it culminates with a very fun house party, a Bluetooth house party.
AKA, who has that many wireless headphones?
These rich kids, apparently. You saw they had sushi day at the high school, or the middle school, right? Yeah?
Okay, point taken.
Yeah, so, we're dealing with a very rich community. But yeah, so as far as how the episode, or who was involved in the episode, the writing credits go to Nick Ziegler and Sarah Acosta, with Kim Garland as the staff writer and series creator Don Mancini weighing in. He's going to be named in every single episode of this podcast, basically. And the director is Dermot Downs. This is his second episode after episode 2, which was Give Me Something Good to Eat. So, with that being said, I'd like to talk a little bit about the episode. Now, Holly, you have a list of things. I think what's going to be fun is to kind of go through the list and bounce off of those.
Fair enough.
So I want you to go ahead and hit us with that list.
Okay. So, I have a list of why I hate Lexi. She has enraged me this entire series, and props to actress Olivia Allen Lind. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yes, yeah, you're good.
For real, just the fact that she can make me hate this character so much. And I just have like this blind rage towards this child's actions. And as an adult, I shouldn't, obviously, but like props to the writers, props to the actress who brings out this character in such a I thought originally psychopathic way, but she's more of a narcissist with, what antisocial personality disorder. I looked it up.
Well, and one thing that I want to, you talk about the sheer rage you find. Like, it's funny to kind of look at the subreddit for Chucky after every episode and how many grown-ass adults are like, this child needs to die.
Right?
It's hilarious to me.
Right.
It's terrifying, too, but yeah, Olivia, she does a fantastic job. I think she's the best of the child actors on the show. Like, I don't think any of them are particularly weak, except for maybe the kid who plays Oliver.
She's been given a lot to chew on.
Yeah, it helps that her character is just so goddamn nasty.
Right? My father used to tell me never start a fight, but always finish it. And that actually got me suspended from middle school. But I just want to, my 13-year-old self just wants to deck this kid. And it's just, oh my goodness. Okay, moving on.
So I know that you have this list of reasons why you hate her. Do you want to read some parts of this list?
Yeah, I'll go for it. Okay. So,
and is this just from the whole series or just this one episode?
I was writing for this episode, but obviously this is the fallout of some of her actions in the first 2 episodes, so it's more of in the series so far, I would say. She's entitled and spoiled, which are not her fault, to be fair. She's self-important and egotistical, and she's a bully. What the hell was up with that GoFundMe? Oh my God.
Yeah, that was back in the first episode.
I think I yelled at the TV.
That is like one of the most novel and vicious forms of bullying. And it's interesting because it is an incredibly Gen Z form of bullying.
Right?
It just, because with Gen Z, their anxiety... For someone like, for us millennials, like, a lot of anxiety in horror films comes from, like, the fear of death. But for Gen Z, it seems a lot of their anxiety revolves around social embarrassment.
Well, considering how many social media platforms there are and how important that it's become in a social aspect, it makes a lot of sense. They still have that thing in their heads that says that they should give a fuck what people think about them, and
right.
I think that turns off in your mid-20s.
Yeah, but it's definitely like that. You would only see that kind of bullying in Gen Z. Like, you wouldn't, like, if you were trying to do a Gen X horror film and people were taking up a charity, with a change jar at the high school in an 80s film, that wouldn't work.
It would be embarrassing, but it doesn't reach everyone, whereas when it's on your phone, it can reach everyone.
And that, like, you may have people who are outside of the social circle who are then like, oh, this poor kid, and then it's just, like, even more, secondhand embarrassment.
Right.
But, okay, so I like that so far. So what else you got for me?
Okay. So, along with analyzing why I hated Lexi, I realized that she's also suffering from parental abuse. Mm-hmm. She's neglected. I mean... Yes, she lives in a beautiful home with her mother and father and sister. She has everything she could ever want. But with that said, her mom seems pretty preoccupied with being the mayor. Mm-hmm. And her sister is obviously on the autism spectrum. So she has a lot of responsibility that someone her age probably shouldn't be taking on. She has little to no consequences with her actions, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I believe... I might be wrong on the term here, but I believe she's also suffering from emotional incest. Usually that's when the parents degenerate and the child takes care of the parent. But here we see that her parents aren't necessarily in tune with what Caroline needs, and that's where Lexi takes over.
Yeah, we have that moment when when Caroline's needing to go to bed and Lexi sings to her and everything like that. It's very, like, unusually nurturing given the character, mm-hmm. but it kind of shows, I think, what you're talking about with that, what was it, the emotional incest?
Yes.
Yeah, where it's, she has to be this supervisor figure, because every time we've seen the parents, every time we've seen Lexi's parents, they're off at some sort of function. They were at in the second episode, they went to the, mayor's Halloween party or something like that. Mm-hmm. In this episode, they had to go see...
the theater tickets.
Yeah, they had the theater tickets. So it's like absentee socialite parents.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the mayor keeps turning... Well, at least in the instance of the parent-teacher conference, mm-hmm. the mayor was turning Lexi's issues onto herself, which might be that her mom's also a narcissist too. But, I mean, that just brings it back to all the adults in this town are terrible. But with that said, I don't think necessarily that Lexi is a psychopath, even though that's what I thought at first. I was analyzing her traits via Google. I am not a licensed psychologist. I believe she's honestly suffering from narcissistic, sociopathic, antisocial personality disorder. I think I'm using a little extra words there to combine them, but she's got a pervasive pattern of grandiosity. She believes that she's special or high status, especially because that's been ingrained by her mom, who is the mayor. The mayor. She's got arrogant behavior and attitude. She monopolizes conversations. She takes advantage of others. She has fragile self-esteem. Like,
Did you just do an office selves of steam?
I did.
That's great.
Selves of steam.
Selves of steam.
But, you know, all of these things, you know, dude, if she lit fires and pissed the bed when she was a kid, she might have been a psychopathic killer. Which, okay, I have a question for you.
Okay.
If Chucky wasn't so preoccupied with trying to kill Lexi, would Lexi be a good candidate for Chucky to teach or even to jump into?
You know, that's interesting. I want to say probably not, given, like, Charles Lee Ray of the past. Chucky is into the corruption of the innocent, and when you frame Lexi as being this kind of narcissistic sociopath, it just seems like it's too easy. Like, Chucky likes a challenge. That's why he's kind of grooming Jake here.
Oh, that's fair.
That's why he took over Nika in Cult of Chucky. Like, Chucky likes to play around, and I think that, like, with Lexi, there's too much of a shortcut for him.
Would you say Chucky enjoys child's play?
There you go. Well, and then let's talk about, like, one of my favorite, like, okay, so I'll be honest. I think Lexi is one of my favorite characters on the show. Like, she's in my top 3.
You like the bad guys.
Yeah, like, every show that has a character that causes the conflict, I'm like, hell yeah. So, Lexi is definitely in my top 3 characters. Let's talk about that apology scene for a moment.
Oh my god. That was interesting.
It was brutal. So you know, part of the episode, it's Jake, like, he's stalking Lexi, you know, because he's thinking about killing her because Chucky's been prodding him.
Well, yeah, he has that giant knife with him.
Yes. You know, and he runs with the knife at one point, which I cringed when I saw him running with that knife.
Sir, you're out in the open. Someone could see you.
And he has the knife pointing upwards.
Right.
You know, instead of having the knife pointing downwards to the ground, he has it pointing upwards. So Jake has a lot to learn. But, so he's stalking Lexi, he thinks. But it turns out that, Lexi had let Junior hold on to her phone to listen to music. And they were also dressed identically, which was really weird and creepy to me.
I'm not sure if the baby blue is one of their middle school, like, spirit colors.
Yeah.
Or she's just so domineering as a personality. It's like, here.
Yeah, you know, that
sweatshirt.
it could go either way, which is, I like that it's like, you know, is it just because it's her exerting her personality over Junior, or is it a school color? We don't know. But, and I'm sure there's probably clues if we watch that we would identify it. But so anyway, like, Jake, he jumps out to confront who he thinks is Lexi. It's Junior. Junior calls Jake a freak and, like, runs off and that sort of thing. But Junior later, when he meets up with Lexi, he tells her, "Hey, you need to apologize to Jake." Mm-hmm. Especially because, you know, it wasn't just making fun of Jake's father at the Halloween party, but was also making fun of Junior's uncle.
Yeah. And even though he was a bad guy, you know, Jake's dad, it still hurts Junior. And, you know, obviously it would for any normal person, but Lexi doesn't really seem to give a shit until it affects her relationship with Junior.
Mm-hmm. So Lexi then later finds Jake in the Wheeler garage. Jake is messing with all of the yard tools, trying to find his killing instrument, basically. And then Lexi approaches him and gives, like, one of the most insincere forced apologies ever committed to film. It is beautiful and it's bullshit.
So, I just want to shake her. And I know you're not supposed to shake children, but damn it.
It was just one of those things, well, I'm sorry if you took it the wrong way. You know, that kind of like BS response. So what happens next is, like, as far as the audaciousness of her request, she asked Jake if her little sister can have Chucky. Because Caroline has become fixated on the Chucky doll.
Yeah, that was a bold move, Cotton.
It was like, and just, you know, and then Jake's obvious like, no, not at all, until like he realized, and that's one of the things, when I did my review, I always try to do these little sections called Seeds of Chucky, where I point out references to the other films, and one I forgot to include was then when Chucky is talking to Jake later, he mentions Jake having completion anxiety. That was a reference to Curse of Chucky, because Nika accused Chucky of having completion anxiety. So that's one of those nice little narrative threads that follows through. So Jake and Chucky end up forming this plan to take Chucky to Lexi's house.
While we're in the garage, though, I do love that little sidebar she does about the wax museum. Essentially insulting Jake's art craft as well, but also like comparing him to someone who just does menial labor, which, I mean, if you're a landscaper for a living, like, you're a hardworking person. I am not, you know, downing that at all, but she's just like trying to insult him through this. But also she notices the wall of tools, and she's like, well, the wax museum was really boring except for the wall of tools, and it was like serial killers.
Yeah.
Their weapons and whatnot, and I just thought that was really interesting. That was the one thing in the museum that interested her, was the wall of killing mechanisms.
You know, and maybe they're going to like give us a Lexi who sides with Chucky. Like, maybe she is going to be interested. Maybe Chucky sees her as a potentially better protege. Like the previews for future episodes are kind of ambiguous on that. At one point, the kids are teaming up against Chucky.
Which was your main argument as to why she's going to get a redemption arc.
Yeah, like, I see, and there's all, and that's the thing about Olivia's acting, is that she gives Lexi these moments of vulnerability where you see that these actions are her dealing with some sort of trauma. So, you know, I think there is going to be a redemption arc for her, and then I'm looking forward to that, basically, because I think there's a lot of potential there.
I am too, especially as we explore her relationship with Caroline.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you were trying to sell people on Lexi as being a conflicted, traumatized girl, it's those moments with Caroline that really help sell that.
Oh, definitely. Her eyes soften, her voice mellows, she's not as harsh.
Let's talk about that weirdly specific song choice to sing to Carolyn.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Which it seems to me like that, having known some kids who are autistic and who have those kind of hyperfixations, like this little girl being into Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper doesn't seem all that far-fetched, because these kids can latch on to things that you'd be surprised about.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I remember a time when my father was introducing me to music, handed me a giant set of headphones, and Blue Oyster Cult was one of the artists, and it's like, here, enjoy. And Don't Fear the Reaper, it's a banger.
Gave you that rusty Venture education from the Venture Brothers. He sets Dean down in the beanbag chair with the headphones, and he's playing all the Rush albums.
That actually literally happened to me.
Yeah, that's literally how it went. But yeah, no, We've talked a lot about Lexi so far, but the fact that we are means that there's so much to the character.
Again, props to Olivia. I'm not trying to dox this character, but damn, like, she's chewing up the set. I love it.
Yeah. So let's talk about Jake, because Jake is definitely also in my top three. Like, if I have to rank the characters, it's Chucky, Jake, and Lexi. But let's talk about Jake's journey in this episode. How'd you feel about it?
He's a little all over the place, because he's being mentored by a murderous villain. He's trying to access his rage, but he also obviously needs some therapy, and those rich aunt and uncle, they need to get him into therapy, y'all. It's frustrating.
Well, and you see that in the series with these kids, is that like every time the kid is separated from their parents, they get put in a situation with people who are like, on the surface, they're like nice, wonderful people. It's like an elevated setting for the kid, but these people are just not equipped to deal with a traumatized child. Like in Child's Play 2, Andy goes from what is very much a very struggling working class household with his mom to then living in this foster home that's pretty freaking nice. But as much as these temporary caretakers can provide, they're not providing what's most important.
Yeah, and they always say hindsight's 20/20. It's like, well, why didn't you get him a trauma therapist? Probably because trauma therapists were few and far in between, if they even existed back then.
But even in like the current setting, so I think Chucky takes place, I originally thought it took place a couple years later, but I think it actually takes place maybe a couple of months, which would put it about 2017, 2018, I think. I think 2017. So, we've, in the past, 20 years, mental health has become this conversation that's been more public and everything like that. But you get the sense that, for example, with Logan, Junior's father, Jake's uncle, he's kind of old school about things, I think.
He is. He praises his son a lot, even though his wife points out, hey, maybe that's not the best thing for him. He's craving your acceptance, but just because you give it to him doesn't mean it's going to solve his problems.
Right, and then, there's this very pointed scene in the second episode. I know we keep talking about previous episodes, but it's kind of like it makes that through line to the current events, where, Jake's in the heated seat. That's a whole new world for him. And then when he goes and gets out of the car to attend classes, Logan hands him, I think, a tenner for $10 for.
Oh, I thought it was a 20.
It might have been a 20, given the food the food at the school, probably a 20.
Yeah.
But Bree, Jake's aunt, she says it's going to take more than that.
Yeah.
So at least Bree seems a little more aware of what needs to be done. She seems to be more pragmatic about it, but she's not really doing anything about it either. That's
true. She also seems to be preoccupied with whatever she's having a little smooch with on the side. At least that's my theory.
Yeah, see, everybody's assuming that she's in a relationship on the side. I just don't know. I probably that's the case, but I would love to know if it's something really far out there, but we don't know. But
she's just taking pottery classes on the side.
Right. But the whole thing, the whole reason we bring this up to talk about Jake is Jake has this incredibly traumatic journey, and he has no support network. He literally only has Chucky, and Chucky is doing the exact same things that an abusive parent does. In the second episode, we hear him hit Jake off screen. Jake's walking around with that black eye. So Jake is not getting into a situation that's any better. Even though, the world around him is a little more rich, has a little more resources, he's still in this very low space without a real figure to connect with him.
And I mean, there is Miss Fairchild, who I think she sees the signs. And she's really trying to help as much as a teacher can without, crossing the line to get herself fired. But I love Miss Fairchild. I wish I had a teacher like that.
Now, what I loved about that Guardian conference, because obviously Logan and Bree aren't Jake's parents, when Miss Fairchild whips out the phone with the video.
Oh my gosh, what a power move.
Yeah, the catharsis of because I think anyone who listens to this was probably a weird kid in high school to a degree.
That's fair. I listened to it.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, thank God. So, but no, we've all had those moments where it's if we had got something on video, if we had a way to prove that we were being bullied, because with a lot of school administration, it kind of gets swept under the rug, or a kid will be kicked out for a couple of days and come back and they don't learn anything
unless there's concrete proof. there's not a lot that can be done. And it's such a vindicating moment for Jake's team. And Miss Fairchild is definitely on Jake's team.
Yeah. Now, you and I have talked about that tinfoil hat theory about Miss Fairchild.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So go ahead and explain that.
Okay. So I personally think that the actress they cast to play Miss Fairchild looks like Nika. It's the hair, the facial structure, and whatnot. But David believes that it might in fact be Glenda.
It could be Glenda, or, and I'm going to take this a step further. It might be Glenn having transitioned, because...
Oh, that's fair. They were two distinct personalities within.
Right, and then you get the two kids.
Yeah.
And Glenn, the little boy, was always the nicer of the two, based on what we see. Speaking of which, Miss Fairchild is Annie Briggs, so I just want to mention her name because she does a great job.
She really does. Also, I love that she is credited as Miss Fairchild. We do not know a first name, so that could be a major clue right there.
Yeah, and I think that name Fairchild's almost prophetic, because if it's Glenn, maybe, or formerly Glenn having transitioned...
Glenn was a fair child.
Yeah, and as the fair child. So, that's one thing I'm wondering about, because I don't know if it's Glenda, because we see Glenda has that sociopathic tendency in Seed of Chucky, but I don't know how well she would, switch off. We don't know. It's been close to 20 years since. But, Miss Fairchild seems the right age. She seems young enough to be one of Charles and Tiffany's kids.
And to be a teacher in the town where your father is your father's body is buried.
Yeah.
That just seems appropriate.
Yeah, so, and this is like tinfoil hat, right? This is like the insane theory that you do, what's going on in Lost, why is there a polar bear, and then you have these theories, it's a time portal or something like that. We're going to indulge that because we can do that. It's fun. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how Miss Fairchild connects to it, and I think she knows more than she's let on so far.
It's completely possible.
Same situation. Let's talk about...
Detective Evans?
Yeah, Detective Evans. Specifically, her relationship with her son, Devin. Devin Evans.
Devin Evans. That was a choice.
Yes. So first of all, I want to mention that Devin's room is absolutely fantastic.
Oh my god.
And he has a much better podcasting setup than I do, which is also... it makes me envious.
it makes me envious, but it's a reminder of the world that these kids live in. They are... my gosh, $1,000 podcasting equipment just in his room.
Yeah.
Wow. Good for them.
And if we want to talk about hyperfixation, it's interesting that both Detective Evans and Devin are fixated on Jake for, you think for different reasons, but it might be the same reason, because I'm pretty sure that Devin is... he suspects either Jake is involved with more than he's letting on, or he might know about the doll.
Yeah, I have a feeling that he knows about the doll. I love his, the tin hat board on his
Oh, yes,
on his wall.
all the Zodiac stuff.
Yeah, it reminds me of Pepe Sylvia from Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
There is no Pepe Sylvia.
There is no Pepe Sylvia.
But, Devin's interesting because, he's an adorable actor,
Oh, yeah.
And then, if I were a shipper, I'd be like, oh, yeah, Devin and Jake forever. But, I have trust issues. And something about Devin and the way he's approaching it, because he's also... there's this very awkward moment in the... maybe it was this episode, I'm not sure, but there's this awkward moment where Devin approaches Jake and he puts his hand on Jake's shoulder.
Yeah, this episode. And he's secretly recording him during this interaction.
Yeah.
Hey, are you okay? That was really messed up of Lexi to do. So he's he's recording Jake. Mm-hmm. So he's obviously putting something together podcast-wise.
Yeah, and then just the fact that, so Jake is a kid who needs touch. This is a kid who needs to be embraced, who needs, human contact. We all need that, but Jake in particular absolutely needs that, because the only human contact he's had is pain.
That's true.
So for Devin to kind of use that touch for such a strange and kind of unsettling reason is also kind of a form of psychological violence that I think they're going to set up something where Devin causes Jake to flip the switch, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that would be the ultimate betrayal for Jake.
Oh yeah, especially because these two were locked in the closet together in the previous episode for 7 minutes in hell, which I loved. And not hell because it's two dudes, but hell because it's Halloween and everything's spooky.
No, because what happened there, that was straight up bullying.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
But also I want to comment on the acceptance of throwing two dudes in a closet for makeout.
Now, see, you say that's acceptance. I don't buy that. I think it was another form of bullying. It's like, let's put the two gay kids together.
Oh, fair enough.
It's tricky because we're in a society now, and Chucky is showing the society where people are more accepting of these things, and the people who aren't stand out. But if everybody claims to be accepting, then you don't really stand out either. So nobody's kind of like focusing on you.
Fair enough.
So, but no, like I do like the Halloween twist on 7 minutes in heaven being 7 minutes in hell. But like, let's do 7 minutes of hell with consent, please.
That's a fair point. Okay.
But no, I don't know, because as much as I like Devin, I still don't know a ton about him. Like, I don't
trust him.
Yeah, he has his podcast. It's cute. He seems like a nice enough kid, but like, especially with this moment with him with the phone.
If we learned anything from Only Murders in the Building, you need consent to record. And he did not inform Jake he was recording and did not get Jake's consent. So I don't know how ethical Devin is being. Oh,
absolutely. Like, I would be willing to bet like $20 that is not at all, like, you can't legally.
Oh no, and I have a feeling his mom's going to be like, hey kid, you can't do that.
Although one thing that was funny about that whole sequence is, like, if he was listening to the edit on his headphones, but his mom heard it.
I don't know. He has a fancy setup. You don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because, like, the implication is that he's, like, editing and he has the headphones on.
And she hears it and comes in.
Yeah, so I'm not sure what's going on there exactly. But, no, there's little goofs like that occasionally. We'll talk about, like, the biggest one in a bit. But, all right, so we talked about the kids. We've talked about the adults. So what was your favorite moment of the episode, Holly?
R.I.P. Oliver, man. I'm just gonna. Sorry, spoiler alert.
No, there's no reason to do that here. We're the spoiler version.
Oh yeah. Just getting hacked in these tiny little cuts because you see the doll just go into him, and obviously the actor's there, so you can't actually stab, but just like these little 2-inch stabs.
Oh yeah,
into Oliver's back, just as his friends are partying with these ridiculous Bluetooth headphones.
Right. So yeah, Oliver's death is like incredibly darkly funny because, it's Chucky at this party. He's stalking, trying to get Lexi. Oliver makes the mistake of coming out the wrong door at the wrong time. Chucky like stabs him, and he's just sitting on the back of Oliver, who is screaming, and nobody can hear Oliver because they're all wearing these headphones.
Which are ridiculous.
Yeah, we'll talk about the Bluetooth headphone part, but no, it's that like goofy brutality of Chucky where he's just sitting on this kid's back and just stabbing over and over and over and over again. And it's just, it's fucked up to say, but I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I also loved Lexi in her room alone with the joint. Just like, dude, what 13-year-old has that much access to weed? And then I remember, oh right, dispensaries exist now. Not when I was 13.
And these are also like the rich kids. So there's probably like the middle schooler who is like the brother of like the town dealer or something like that.
And they're also drinking liquor, not beer, not Natty Light.
Just the kids are partying pretty young. Like, I was looking at that Halloween party and I'm like, I never went to a party like that until I was like in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people are going to have issues with, like, the sexuality of these middle schoolers, you know, like, them actively, like, making out, them drinking, smoking, doing all that.
But if they're not receiving the love at home that they normally would, they're going to sexually act out.
Well, and then also that's, like, a reality, though. Mm-hmm. You know, because, you know, middle schoolers do all that now.
Especially now that they have access to that information, you know, like... porn is very easily accessible.
Yeah,
so they know what they're doing instead of like fumbling around with a person for 20 minutes.
Apparently Junior doesn't know what he's doing because Lexi kept telling him so. That was in the second episode.
You know, I feel like Lexi doesn't know her own body enough to tell him what to do.
Yeah. So it's kind of weird, like, at least for my generation or people like me, like when you see the kids like partying and making out, it's like they're middle schoolers, but then also you're like, but, you know, the middle schoolers are doing that. So
well, they also probably have a bit more emotional maturity nowadays.
Are they more emotionally mature now?
Okay, fair point.
Have you seen TikTok?
Well, maybe they just have more access to the world now than we would have at that age. And I think that, you know, definitely it helps with their perception of the world and how that they want to be viewed or viewed. How they want to present themselves to the world, and you know that's it's all they've grown up so fast, David.
Yeah, and
they grew up so fast.
So, you know, I'm sure there are going to be people who take issue with this, but like honestly, those kids are acting the way kids act. You know, it's to borrow a term from Gen Z, for people like me to watch this, it's cringe. Because I'm looking at this, I'm like, oh, little sweet summer children, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing? You're too young for this.
But there's also that, you know, when you get older, you can't tell how old children are. I guess, like, I could never tell, when I was a child, I could never tell an adult how old they were because I just had no gauge of that. So now when I see like younger people, I'm like, are you 12?
Yeah. So let's talk about that Bluetooth headphone party, please.
Oh my God.
So Lexi is keeping an eye on Carolyn for the night. You know, Carolyn now has Chucky. She's absolutely in love with Chucky. She loves that little doll. But Carolyn needs to go to bed, but at the same time, Lexi is going to be throwing a party in the mayor's house. Mm-hmm. And now this party is quite literally a Bluetooth headphone party. So Lexi has her phone. Everybody connects their Bluetooth headphones to that phone, and they're listening to her party mix or whatever.
Okay, point of interest there. You say everybody tunes their Bluetooth headset to it. Sir, they're all the same brand, all the same color. I have this weird theory that the mayor's house just has 20 of these headsets just lying around somewhere. Is it for like a historical tour when the public comes in? But like...
That's interesting.
They're all the same brand. There's no personality for each person. So I'm like, these are not their personal headphones. These are from the house.
Okay, well, I mean, that's entirely possible. Might be part of like a guided tour or something like that.
I don't know.
Maybe they stole them from the school. Who knows?
That's my tinfoil hat theory, is that there's no way.
The mayor is embezzling funds through like purchasing headphones at a very cheap rate and then reselling them.
Hey, that kind of sounds like what's going on in our county right now with our current sheriff and his podcasting equipment.
Whoa, don't get us arrested.
Okay.
So literally you have this party where it's all these teens dancing and drinking, but in complete silence aside from the scuffing of their feet because all the music is in their headphones. Mm-hmm. And it seems very, very weird at first until you consider that it cuts down on the potential of a noise complaint and also doesn't disturb a child sleeping upstairs.
Right? It's pretty ingenious. It's...
Like, I was actually pretty impressed by that. I think when we were watching, I'm like, wow, that's actually really smart.
While I was over here yelling at the TV.
Yes.
What even is this?
But, as we've seen with the show before, you set something up, there has to be a payoff. So you've got all these tweens dancing with their headphones, oblivious to what's going on. Lexi goes up to smoke a joint after making Junior jealous with Oliver. So Lexi's in her room, and she encounters Chucky. And I love watching Chucky attack Lexi, especially when he jumps on her back and does his little stubby kicks. Like, that's always been a highlight. And that's, like, straight out of Child's Play 2, when Chucky jumps on Kyle. You know, just seeing this little tiny doll trying to choke her out with his little legs kicking and doing that kind of Brad Dourif incomprehensible gibberish scream, like, sort of thing. It's a wonderful, wonderful scene, but that also causes an even bigger problem because it was the joint, right?
Yeah.
The joint hits the curtain, a rush of wind comes in, and it lights the bedroom on fire, which then lights the entire house on fire, and we get this absolutely ridiculous scene of these kids dancing downstairs with their headphones on as the second story is burning.
I have so many problems with this.
Yeah, let's talk about the lack of situational awareness here.
Okay, well, I mean, lack of situation... pardon me.
Yeah,
I'm laughing through it. Lack of situational awareness on the kids' part, because I'm sorry, if you're... do they all suffer from anosmia? Like, can you not smell the smoke?
That's one thing that we don't talk about with Generation Z is their complete lack of sense of smell. It's just, it's very sad, really. They'll never know the joys of a nice carbonara.
Okay, boomer. I just, that was a little silly to me, just because, I mean, it...
And it's the high stylization where they're dancing in slow motion with, like, the dramatic angles. You see, like, the heads, like, turning. There's flames up above.
Right.
And you get that wonderful shot of Chucky in the bedroom just laughing maniacally as the place is burning down around him. It sparks joy.
But also, as a stoner, I can tell you, my joints have never been that dangerous. Like, I get a gust of wind came in, and it was right by the sheer curtains. But if anyone who's ever dropped a joint can tell you, things don't catch on fire that fast.
That is true.
I know, they had to push along the storyline, I get it. But still, it was a little silly.
Well, and then I guess that was ultimately my kind of issue, because with things like this, there's that suspension of disbelief. You know, things that don't make sense, but you buy it anyway.
Oh, yeah, because you have to continue the story.
Yeah, and you're just like, okay, within the logic of the world, I get it. But it was just the fact that these kids aren't noticing the extreme heat, the smoke, and the smell of burning wood.
Possibly burning Lexi.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like, apparently if
definitely burning Oliver.
Yeah, Oliver is firewood now. But no, just like, you know, apparently you cannot be hurt by a fire if you don't hear it. That's what I'm taking. Yeah, it's goofy, and like I think it was a misstep in a lot of ways.
But also, it was like the first moments of the fire experiencing oxygen, and when that happens, you know, what do they call it, a backdraft? Mm-hmm. It just booms through like a bomb. Yeah. So it also could have been like the first 3 seconds of it happening. Yeah, because stylized it. More
than likely, the next episode's going to immediately open up with the kids going, "Oh fuck, the house is on fire."
We did see a preview for the next episode where they're in an ICU room.
Yeah, and then we also get kind of a glimpse of like the burned out mayor's house and everything like that. So while this is all going on, we also have Jake at the graveyard, which I found like really, really interesting. For a couple of reasons. Number one, him kind of like trying to come to terms with this trauma, and it's deeply sad.
It is. Like, dude, I was emo. I was a goth kid.
What do you mean was?
But like, I'm not gonna go to a graveyard to just. Well, I mean, that is how I met you.
Yeah, let's not talk about that on the podcast.
Okay. But you know, it's just to feel so incredibly alone and sad and just separated from everyone that you go to a graveyard just to hang out with, just to be close to your parents. Like, that's so... This kid needs therapy,
and
David.
It's only been, like, what, maybe a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. So, like, the wounds are still there. But another reason why I really like the graveyard scene is they show the grave of Charles Lee Ray.
Oh, yeah.
And the date on the grave, I have it written down here. Let me pull that up. It's the date of the release of the original Child's Play movie.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah, so it was November 9th, 1988.
Oh, that's great.
So that was a fun little nod. But no, I think the graveyard scene is interesting, but it also places Jake away from the scene of what is obviously going to be a crime that Detective Evans is going to investigate.
Right. And Jake has his phone with him, so I mean, that does put location data, I mean, it's on Jake's side. So she's not going to be able to pin this on him.
But I feel like that suspicion's still going to be there because there's going to be talk about, like, well, Chucky was there.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what's in Detective Evans's head right now, but, like, already there should be some questions about, like, what is the significance of the doll in all of this?
Right. Because, I mean, the people who grew up in Hackensack have to... Did I say it right?
Yeah, Hackensack, yeah.
Hackensack, okay.
That's a great name.
It is. It also makes me think of Hacky Sack.
Which I'm sure they appreciate.
But, you know, it makes me think about the adults in this town who are so oblivious to, like, the children around them and the traumas they're going through. But what did those adults experience as kids growing up in this town, if any of them did? Did Detective Evans grow up in this town and knows about the rumors and the mythos regarding Charles Lee Ray, and is she putting it together? But we haven't seen her backstory yet to figure that out.
You know, and that's the other thing. I think the reason Devin is coming off as kind of mysterious is because he knows about Charles Lee Ray, because you and I know about Henry Lee Lucas living in Hemet for like a month.
Dude, right?
Yeah, we live in the town of Hemet. We're not giving you our address.
So we live in the town where they have the Scientology gold base, which is so creepy. And then Henry Lee Lucas, we were listening to, shout out, last podcast on the left.
Yep.
And Marcus mentioned that him and his child bride were living in Hemet, California.
Not Marcus's child bride, Henry Lee Lucas's child.
Sorry, pardon me. Marcus was explaining.
Yes.
Yes. But yeah, it's just like our little bumfuck town.
Yeah, like if there's a tangential relationship, like a tangential link to a serial killer, you would think that the podcast, the notable podcast in the show's universe, would mention Charles Lee Ray, but it hasn't. And, you know, Charles Lee Ray has got to be like a Michael Myers figure to Hackensack, and I don't think we've approached that yet, because narratively, they're waiting to do that with Devin. But, like, the adults have to know about Charles Lee Ray at this point, because he's a huge serial killer.
Yeah.
In the universe.
Any true crime nut would be like, oh yeah, I have this one thing in my town.
Yeah, so that's the other reason why I'm a little, like, not sure what's going on with Devin, because you'd think he would have mentioned Charles Lee Ray in the podcast at some point, because that's, like, the biggest fucking news in Hackensack.
Did we look on his little murder board and see if Charles Lee Ray was on there?
That's the question. It's one of those things where, you know, we might be rewarded for pausing and checking it out, and I think I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
But, you know, there's something about, like, and then not only that, but let's talk about Charles Lee Ray himself, because we get a lot of background on him. Oh my gosh. And, you know, again, he's not the only serial murderer that's been in Hackensack, because we find out what happened to Charles's parents. And it's one of the most shocking things that I've seen in Child's Play, like the franchise.
For real. That was... It took me a moment to process what was going on, and I was like, oh, shit.
So, you know, we have a young Charles in, like, 1965. That would put Chucky right now at, like, 65, maybe 70 years old.
I don't know math.
Yeah.
So...
But, so, yeah, at this point, like, Chucky is technically a senior citizen. But, we get this flashback to a young Charles.
Chucky's a boomer.
Yeah, you know, no, Chucky is most definitely a boomer, especially with some of his commentary about the kids and everything like that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, gender fluid. But,
I'm not a monster.
I'm not a monster. Yeah, I have some issues with that. So, but yeah, so little Charles Lee Ray, he hears, like, screaming downstairs. And he goes downstairs and he sees his father being stabbed to death by a home invader.
That was creepy.
And it's not that, like, he doesn't call for help. He just kind of stands there, which you attribute to, like, shock most of the time, right?
Also, I want to say the architecture of the 1960s home was pretty cool. Mainly the stairs. It reminds me of the Brady Bunch stairs, but I also am super afraid of those stairs because somebody could just slice your ankles just from the back.
You've watched too many scary movies.
I have.
So, you know, little Charles is just there watching his dad get stabbed over and over and over, and the stabbing was a lot like what Chucky later did to Oliver.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah.
So eventually Charles's mom comes down, sees what's going on, and kind of pries Charles from the stairs and takes him up to the bedroom, and they both hide in a closet, like in Halloween.
With those creepy slats on the closet door.
So, you've got Charles, his mother is covering his mouth. At one point, he kind of like forces his mouth away from her hand, like, I can't breathe, that sort of thing. And we get the sense that she's trying to, like, save her kid's life, as any mother would do. Mm-hmm. Now, eventually, the home intruder enters, and when he opens the closet door, he sees that Charles's mom is dead, and then Charles, who had grabbed a pocket knife on the escape, is covered in blood.
Yeah. So
Charles had killed his own mother.
Yeah. That was... That... Oh, man. That was hard.
So, number one, any thought about, Chucky being an ally? Because that's the big thing on Twitter right now, is I'm seeing a lot of people posting Chucky with, the trans flag, right? And,
yeah.
That very cute, I'm not a monster.
Yeah.
But when you think about what's going on in the show and what's happened in the series so far, you have Chucky who's very deliberately manipulating and gaslighting Jake because he wants something from Jake. Mm-hmm. So having read Jake's diary, he sees that Jake's gay identity is a problem spot for himself, and he says the right thing.
Okay.
The other thing is, he talks about his kid being gender fluid and, I'm not a monster, but when you watch Seed of Chucky, you don't get the sense that Chucky is anything more than ambivalent about Glenn/Glenda. He mostly just gets fed up with the whole situation, and he's like, no, I don't want to leave my doll form. But, yeah, he seems like he doesn't seem readily accepting.
Well, it kind of reminds me of, there were a few Drag Race queens who were talking about the way that LGBTQ plus characters have been a lot of villains, and just very not the obvious good guy on the hero's journey. But they said, I'm paraphrasing just so much here, but we don't always have to be the good guy, you know, to be represented and to be in the world, you have to take, different parts.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about representation, you need the good representation, of course.
Oh, yeah.
But you also need the bad representation as well.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just because you're gay doesn't mean you can't be a terrible person or a good person, right, or someone who, who's ambivalent to everything. That's just a portion of your identity. But we're just getting to a point where that portion has become more accepting and a more loving world.
Right. And so, if Chucky is an ally, I'm all for it. I'm glad that murderous doll is an ally.
He's still a narcissist.
Yeah, he's still a terrible person. But, it's because he's a terrible person, I just do not trust it.
Oh, no, not at all.
So, I think we're going to get ready to wrap up here a little bit. We've had, a very nice discussion so far. Good job, Holly Hann. You did it.
Oh, shucks. I do what I can.
One thing I want to talk about, though, is, there's a lot of, film references and stylistic flourishes in the show. Mm-hmm. One thing that I remember when we were watching it, I remarked on, the colors of the show. Particularly, Lexi's blue dress, and then, for example, her room, which is, a very deep red.
Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of, Giallo films, Dario Argento's, Suspiria and that sort of thing, where color is very key. And I think a lot of the color is going to be symbolic as well. Because I think Jake's walls in his temporary bedroom with the Wheelers, they're gray.
They are gray.
So that's a morally questionable color. You can't really get any insight from the color gray.
That's fair. Also, just on a emotional check-in point, he's not feeling anything. Mm-hmm.
And there is that splash of color in the room with the pride flag. I'm wondering if the pride flag was from...
his old room, it was.
It was in his old room?
Yeah, he had a couple pride things up in his room.
Okay, yeah, because I wasn't sure, because I figured that would be something like what his dad would have torn down at some point.
That's why I was really surprised about Jake's dad.
Yeah, and then that's the thing, I can't totally demonize Jake's father. Like, what he did was shitty. It was abuse, that sort of thing. But again, they've mentioned so many times that there was something good in him at one point, and after the death of his wife. And that's the most horrible thing Chucky's done so far, is he denied Jake a chance to fix that relationship, which is one of those things that's really fucked up about this.
Yeah, that is. I mean, you had mentioned even in, what was it, the first episode? Hey, at least he's not hitting his kid, and then, 2 seconds later.
And then the minute, Logan hits.
When they introduced Jake's father as being not necessarily accepting, but in his own way, he was trying to process it. Also, along with grieving, there seemed like there was going to be a redemption for that relationship. And yeah, Chucky just stole it from him. Yeah,
because you feel like had things been better, like had maybe like his dad gotten some steady work and everything like that, because a lot of the anxiety also, and that's one thing that I've noticed is a through line in the series, is also there's like a element of like capitalist anxiety.
Oh, definitely.
Because, in the first movie, Karen Barkley, single mother, living in a very nice apartment, admittedly, but she doesn't have a whole lot of money. She has to buy the doll.
Oh, right. She bought the doll in an alleyway.
From a homeless man. So, and then, it's always
unhoused.
this kind of... unhoused. There we go. Yes. But there's always this, little undercurrent of, capitalism in there, and it has a very strong effect, and, we see that with Jake and his father.
Yeah. His mom probably brought income into the home as well, and as most families do now, you have to have dual income. So, along with his dad being a mechanic, and he is a very prideful person, obviously, because he won't take money from his own brother. Yeah. And he regards that as an insult when his brother is just trying to, show love in the way that he can.
Well, and also, we are starting to see that there's some shit going on with the brother as well.
Oh, definitely.
The whole thing with the Halloween party with, are those my medals? And kind of needling Junior about his training. It's that parent kind of living vicariously through their child.
Which is definitely another form of abuse.
Yeah, it is definitely abuse. So, and our cat just chimed in. I think Zelda's telling us we need to wrap up. So, overall, how did you feel about the episode?
I really liked it. There were fun moments. There were moments that made you think about people's motivations, obviously, and where they're going. And we're only 3 episodes in, so it's really, there's so many paths that this can go. And I love tinfoil hatting with you, because it's just right now we have a lot of pathways that this can go until it narrows down. But I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I really think that we're in for a treat, and we're only about halfway through this first season. I am 99% sure they're going to get a season 2, because every time it releases a new episode, it trends. Chucky keeps showing up on the WWE shows.
It broke our SyFy app yesterday. I was trying to rewatch the episode, and it was skipping over key moments of dialogue.
And then, we were able to kind of fix that up for you. But so is this a show that you want to continue following?
I do. I want to see what happens, especially with Lexi. Again, shout out to the actress Olivia, just because she made me hate her so much in the first 2 episodes. I'm like, is she gonna die? I want to see what happens with Jake. Is he gonna go to therapy? That is mine.
And here,
will he murder someone? But is he gonna get some therapy?
And here's the big problem: is in that kind of classic cartoon setup, you have the person who's got the devil on his shoulder, the devil being Chucky here, but we need the angel on Jake's shoulder, and Jake just does not have that yet. And I'm thinking that when Andy shows up, Andy's gonna be that for him. And Andy's credited on Alex Vincent is credited on 4 episodes.
I'm excited.
So I feel like if he's going to show up, it's going to be in the next episode.
I hope so.
But we'll see.
I did want to leave with a note. We did talk a lot about parental abuse and, different kind of personality disorders that can be harmful to the person who is exhibiting them or to the people around them. So I just wanted to let you all know that the National Domestic Violence Hotline number is 1-800-799-7233. That's here in the United States where we are. I know this is Haunted MTL, but that's where we are in the United States. So, reach out to your local domestic violence center and see, if you need help or if someone around you needs help, please speak up. Please be an advocate.
So before we close up, I just want to ask, do you consider yourself a member of the Cult of Chucky?
Yes.
Very good. Okay, I think everyone so far has.
I was kind of forced into it at first, but I'm here for it.
Isn't that how most cults work?
Fair. I was a Mormon.
There we go. So, from one cult to another, there we go. With that being said, we are going to close out. Holly, thank you so much. We'll figure out what we're going to do for dinner. My cat is also saying goodbye.
Yeah, sorry everybody. You're all probably really familiar with Zelda by this point. We just can't get her to shut up.
But that's okay. She has a lot to say.
She really does.
So, again, thank you all for listening. We will see you next week. I don't know who our guest is, but I always find someone interesting to talk to. So.
Oh, shucks. Thank you so much for having me, you guys, and I appreciate all of you.
All right. Take it easy. Bye.
Take it sleazy.
You have been listening to Kids' Stuff, a Chucky podcast, a HauntedMTL original podcast. Our theme is Pop Goes the Weasel by Kevin MacLeod. You can find more of Kevin MacLeod's music at incompetech.filmmusic.io. If you want to find out more about me, the podcaster, you can just go to hpkomics.com, hpcomics.com, or you can find me on the socials at hpkomic. For more great horror content, do not forget to visit HauntedMTL.com.